Whoa.
Go ahead.
I have a question. It has to do with our currently elected state representative from this district, a man by the name of Tom McMillan, who is anti-education. And I want to know, how do we get out? Recently, there was a report published by the about early childhood education and how it saves real dollars.
Yep.
And it listed all of the ways of saving. And his reaction was, oh, well, it's bogus. It doesn't work. It was fake. How do we get everybody, each one of us, to call the man, call him on it? He wants to, now his latest thing is a proposal to move money out of high schools into lower grades. He is positively a troglodyte of the first order, and I will tell you what I really think of him, except it's polite company.
Okay, can we give her a
So
chance
can
to
you
answer?
tell us, I mean, how do we get the word out to get everyone to drive him nuts?
Thank you. Okay, first of all, let me say, when I ran for the State Board of Education, he ran too.
Oh,
And guess who didn't win? So,
we weren't that lucky last time.
I know. It really takes education because we have to overcome what you see outside. Because every time we say invest in early childhood education, we have the other side who says, you're crazy, you don't know don't you see the economy we're in? And they're saying, we can't afford to do this. And I'm saying, we can't afford not to. So I need you guys to start writing letters to the editor and back up what we're trying to say. Because right now, the only voices being heard are the ones on the other side. Nobody's standing up and saying, you know what, investments are good things because they pay off. And if you really want to get past this economic crisis we're in, you have to invest in education because, and this is the one thing that you can say that will trump every argument they ever say. If you look at every state that has the best economic development right now, it has nothing to do with their taxes. It is entirely about the number of individuals who are educated. It's about their educated workforce. So that trumps every argument they have.
So would you like to respond to the question?
Yes, coming from the medical community, the latest information is even grimmer.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not the education where the problem originally starts from, it's prenatal care. And the thinking currently is that with very poor prenatal care, the child, the fetus, brain is somehow damaged. And the result is that the child is always behind. So we have to start with better prenatal care in the communities. It was pretty grim, the lecture I went to with the facts that were given. Yes, we do have to give more money to the lower level. That's why I proposed a state graduated income tax. Our tax structure has to be reformed. Now, a very interesting article in the paper when the governor proposed her tax proposal, Michael Bishop immediately said, my God, it's not revenue neutral. We can't have that. Governor Granholm's proposal gave the state a few million extra dollars, and look at the response on the other side. That was the response. So there's a lot of opposition to any kind of tax increase. McMillan is a good example.
So Bruce, you had a question?
Yeah, since we're talking about education, obviously maybe the second thing the state Senate cut was the Michigan promise. I feel strongly that a promise is a promise. You don't make a promise and then you don't set a very good example for our students when we say a promise. We give them a promise to give them, say we're going to give them $4,000. Would you restore the Michigan Promise scholarship, and how would you pay for it?
So we'll try to do this fair. So maybe you go first this time. First of all, what is the Michigan Promise, for those who don't know?
The Michigan Promise was money that came from the tobacco settlement, and I think it's supposed to be $2,000 for 2 years, maybe $4,000 total, and the students used to get it at the start of the school year, the first and second year of college, and then They started not doing that, delaying it, because they're always delaying payments because that's how they stretch the money, and now they eliminated it. But it came from the tobacco settlement, so that money is now just, I think, going into the general fund. I would restore the Michigan Promise, but you'd have to figure out some other place to make the cut. I'm a believer in the Constitution says we have to have a balanced budget.
I agree with you that a promise is a promise and it shouldn't be broken, particularly mid-year, after these students have already started school and we're counting on that money, and the higher education institutions were counting on it as well. And so that was an extra cut to higher ed. I know Wayne State University absolved the money that was supposed to go to those students. That's millions of dollars that Wayne State lost out on. I disagree with cutting the Michigan Promise at the time that they did it. Going forward, if you can't afford it, here's what I would suggest doing. Right now in our higher education system, whenever we cut, a lot of that gets put back on the students with tuition increases. So I would recommend, if you want to help students out, but you can't afford the Michigan Promise, then increase funding to the higher education institutions so that they don't have to raise tuition. That in and of itself is also a savings to our students, and it would be an investment in our higher education. But doing it midway through the year was unbelievable. Yeah, it was terrible. It hurt families, it hurt higher ed, it hurt students, and it was, it was unnecessary that they did that. There were other ways to save that money.
That's why we need the July 1st start for the fiscal year.
Yeah.
All right, moving on, another question over here?
I have a question. We talk about early childhood education, how early, and what do you propose as, what would you do?
Right. So early childhood education, I would say starting at like age 4. It would be great if you could offer it for all children, but even if we just start at age 4, having parents the opportunity to go to their school, take their 4-year-old in for early childhood education experiences. One day if we could get to universal preschool would be great, but just giving parents the opportunity. And I'm sorry, what was your follow-up question?
Well, would it be a full day, half a day? I think about Montessori's, and I think about that as an example of early childhood.
Exactly.
Which has always been, I believe, an excellent way to start off a child.
Absolutely.
But I was just wondering what your thought was on early childhood.
Yeah, so it would be something very similar, an educational preschool experience for children starting at age 4, for example, available to all students.
Would you agree with the half day rather than a full day?
You can do the half day for the 4-year-olds. Right now, the kindergarten, we're moving into a full day, and that's a funding issue because schools were previously had the option of doing half day or full day, but they got paid for a full day regardless. So the incentive was to do half a day. So the state came through and said, you can still do half day, but we're not going to pay you for a full day of school if those kids aren't in for a full day, which is why now most of them are going to a full day. So it comes down to the funding.
So I know you already answered the question about when to get started, but did you want to answer this question specifically?
Yes,
When to get started when they're in the womb still?
Yes, I'd like to answer.
Yeah, please, let him in.
The time to start is not age 4. The time to start is much earlier. That's called nursery school. And children that do not go to nursery school, when they get to kindergarten, are already behind, and they're behind the rest of their life. In the 1960s, we already had the Head Start program. That was the whole idea behind the Head Start program, to get the kid going in nursery school. And whether the state or the federal government is going to fund that, it's very important. That's why the inner city child is so far behind, because the child out in this community is going to nursery school for 2 years. When my kids went to kindergarten, they had it sort of wrong, because they thought the kids should be in school to socialize the first year, because they didn't have that experience. Well, they already had the experience. They already could do some reading and do the letters, and you need that experience early on.
Okay, another question? Somebody, any other questions?